Welcome back to the Columbus, Ohio Real Estate Market Update. I'm Ryan Dieter with Key Realty. In today's video, we dive into the May of 2025 numbers as they're out. We're sitting here towards the end of June, as we always do, a month out of the numbers coming out. But last month, I made a pretty bold prediction, and I mentioned that we saw such modest growth that I don't know if we will see appreciation in the next few months. We may see some depreciation happening, and we have the numbers in. We'll see if that came true this month or if I was wrong for once. And you'll have to tune in to find out. So let's dive into it. All right, here are the numbers for May of 2025, put out by the Columbus Board of Realtors for us. And we'll dive right into it. As you can see here, we did see positive numbers. So I was slightly wrong when it came to my predictions thus far. Now we still have time for this. I think I said, if you go back and watch my last video, I said we may see it this year, where we see year over year depreciation for the first time in Columbus in the last 15 or so years. So this is something I am keeping a close eye on. We saw very, very, very modest growth. So just above that positive line you see here, the average price is at 0.7. The median sale price is 1.7, and average price per square foot is 1.4%. And again, I always like to look at those numbers holistically. Like there's things that one number will tell us a little bit different than what's going on in the market. If we see average price be low and average price per square foot be higher, that means that smaller homes are selling for more, and that the average price per square foot is up because more affordable, smaller homes are selling higher in a sense than the larger homes are actually taking a little bit of a slower turn. So we're seeing a little bit of that as a whole, but not drastic. If those numbers are somewhat closer, it means things are moving along very similar. So that's the little nuances that I look at those numbers, but I like to look at where the market's going based on those numbers holistically as we look at what's happening. Again, closed sales is about a wash there, seeing the same, and we're seeing in contracts roughly the same too. So we'll see about these numbers stay pretty consistently year over year, which is still very low compared to the national average, or just the average home sales throughout historical home sales. And plus, you got to think the population of Columbus is also up, so we have lower numbers being sold, but higher, more amount of people in Columbus. So that means that's one of the reasons why these numbers are staying elevated, where a lot of the country is not seeing that. They're seeing numbers go backwards. So Columbus is I would say, a stable market right now, where numbers are stabilized, growth a little bit, but nothing drastic like we've seen the last 5 years. So that's where if you're looking to make a move or a change, sell or buy a house, you understand these numbers, that you're not going to see drastic numbers like we've seen in 22 to 21. We're seeing more modest growth, so you got to understand that. But it also comes down to location. Certain locations, we'll show this here in a minute, are moving a lot faster than other locations, and we're seeing the city actually slow down more so than the suburbs and certain pockets of Columbus as well. So, but before we dive into that, let's dive into the rest of the numbers here. You can see here percent of original list price received is still pretty high. It's still seeing 98%, meaning that realtors aren't, or even people aren't, pushing the price too much. They're understanding this concept that we're not seeing drastic growth, and so we're not realtors and individuals looking to sell their house are not pushing prices too much, but still not getting quite what they were the last few years. And this is where this number used to be over 100% pretty consistently in the 20 to 23 range. So we're seeing this normalize a little bit, where you're seeing some, most homes are still seeing price reductions and not selling for quite what they list at, but we're still seeing homes that once they, this percent of last list price received is meaning that homes are having more price reductions, and we're seeing once they get to a point where buyers are happy with the price, they are making those offers happen. But we're seeing this, we're seeing some homes get negotiated and get, lower offers, and we're still seeing some homes, fly off the shelf and go well over asking. And so it just depends on the home, and we're seeing the fundamentals really matter here, where condition and location and market timing are huge right now. And so if you have a house that checks the boxes and doesn't need much work, those houses still are flying off the shelf, and that's keeping these numbers up. But we're seeing houses that need work and need stuff done sitting longer and having price reductions, and even getting negotiated down to a price where a buyer will finally jump on it. And so that's also making the days on market a little higher. So we're kind of seeing those fundamentals take place, which is getting back to somewhat of a normal market in Columbus as well. So not shocked there is what I'm seeing in the field. We're seeing the median list price of new listings are up. So we're seeing, even though, again, just showing that, hey, prices are up on the list price, even though the up 3%, even though the sell price is only up 0.7% or 1.7% when it coming to that. So we're seeing some price reductions and all that. So we are seeing inventory rise, just as I talked about. We're seeing homes sit longer. So that means inventories are also up, which is a good thing for buyers. It means that we have more options as buyers. If you're not wanting to get in a bidding war, you can look at a house that's been sitting on the market for a little bit and maybe get in there and negotiate a little bit to a price that you're comfortable with. So some advantage to buyers, but it's still what I would consider a seller's market. We're still seeing, days on market only 28 days. So that's not a lot of time considered, historically looking at the market, when 6 months or so is kind of considered a balanced market. So we're still well into this seller's market side here, but we're getting close to that month supply of inventory of 2 months, which means that, if no new houses hit the market, it would take 2 months for the buyers to buy up all the houses, which is, up quite a bit from the last year, and especially from the 21 to 22 years. And so again, we're seeing just this be a little bit more balanced, and I'd be interested to see how next month plays out. I made the prediction that we may see some depreciation because we didn't get this April number was pretty low. You see here this drastic line here. This is what I like to just kind of a snapshot of the market over the history of the last 10 years, and we did see some numbers go up. So I was thinking, well, maybe we'll see this number, that May number, or sorry, the April number never really shut up like it did the last few years. And so I thought, well, if May follows suit, we may see this number, this peak not reach here. But here's something I want to talk about too, is that May typically is the peak of the market. And this is homes closed in May is the peak of the market. So these are homes that are listed in April. This is where a seller has to be careful, and a buyer has to understand this as well, that these numbers are based on homes that are listed in April, ideally, because a good home, at peak of the market, is going to sell in 30 days. It's going to go on the market, and then 30 days later, it's going to close on average. And so these are homes that are listed in April, maybe late March, that are selling in May. And so these are ones that are getting peak market. And then we're going to see this kind of flat line. We see this peak happen and come down. And so we saw it last year. I want to show you, I think last year, this is just a little snapshot of what happened last year of 24 in May. You're seeing, we saw, modest growth, but higher, definitely higher than last year. Average, kind of average growth throughout the history of the market. We're seeing lower than average now as we see these numbers here. But you see last year, if we go to June, actually, here's June of 24. We see June of 24 was, the average price was 384. And in May, it was 385. So you see just slightly higher, but still, it shows us that June or May last year was the peak of the market. So we may have reached the peak of the market for 25 at this 388 number, which means that we probably will start seeing this number come down month over month. Doesn't mean it will have to go down year over year, because, it depends on how far it goes down. But, as long as it stays, go to June, above this 384 number, it has room still to be positive appreciation year over year. And that's what I'm always looking at, year over year data, more so than month over month. Month over month, is important because it shows the trends of Columbus. And if you're looking to buy at the low time versus, sell at the high time, this monthly trend is vital to understand that. When it comes to where's the market going overall, are we seeing appreciation or depreciation? That's when I'm looking year over year, comparing those. So, and looking at year to date this year, you can see here we have much more modest growth, about half of what we saw last year, I believe. Yeah, roughly half of what we saw last year. So just slower growth this year, with everything going on in the markets and some of the confusion and all that stuff. I'm not surprised by that. And so we're seeing this play out in the field as well, where homes that, flew off the shelf sometimes and had a lot of a lot of showings and a lot of offers, are slowed down. Whether we have, just one or two offers on a house versus, 10 like we've had the last few years, and or maybe houses are sitting longer and you get the new price cuts. So those are things that we're seeing on the field. We're seeing buyers have opportunities to come in here and buy. And I want to say here, even though we're seeing some modest growth this year, I do think Columbus is in a weird little bubble right now. Not, and I don't want to say bubble like it's going to burst and go down, where I think there's a lot happening in Columbus. We've got a lot of attention in the last few years, and the national market is not doing great right now. There's areas nationally that are just tanking right now and really taking a hard hit, where Columbus is really being steady and even seeing positive growth. But I think there's an opportunity right now where we're going to see slow growth the next few years. But once these things that are coming to Columbus actually come to fruition and people start moving here for the jobs and all these, massive things being built, I think we will start seeing those numbers spike up again, in my opinion. So there may be an opportunity here in the next few years for a buyer to come in and buy something at a price that's not being shot up year over year. It allows people to save up, be able to make those purchases the next few years as then once these projects are being built here in Columbus and actually are come to fruition, that will increase the value and more population coming here and people moving here for those jobs. In my opinion, will actually create more demand here in Columbus as well. So that's just a little insight of what I'm seeing and thinking of Columbus, because we're kind of in that building, that kind of phase where we're just building and there's no real true benefits besides the national attention. But a lot of the national attention is national money and investors looking to invest in out of state investors have slowed down quite a bit because of the markets, because of interest rates still staying high as well. So we're seeing mostly still local, a lot more local players making, moving the market now more so than we saw the last few years. So with that said, kind of predicting where the market's going, I do think that we're going to start seeing, prices, peak here in June as we hit the summer market. We go into summer market, things slow down. And you can see here in June of last year, we saw numbers come down a little bit. Actually, let's go to July. Of last year. We can kind of jump into July of last year, so 24. And again, this is a website that everyone has access to, so you can go and look for yourself if you want to. If you're curious, you can see July here numbers did come 377 compared to that 380 mark. So we're seeing those numbers come down. As you see here, this is the peak. It comes down as the year goes on and goes down into January, where it goes down to this lowest point, and then comes back up into the new year. One last thing I do want to talk about is, again, going back to the fundamentals, and I mentioned this earlier about location matters right now more than anything when it comes to what the market's doing. So you need to be aware of location based if you're looking to buy or sell. Honestly, you need to understand what the market's doing in your local neighborhood, not just Columbus as a whole, as this is showing that. It's good to understand that, but at the same time, really focusing on your locality matters more than anything. And you can see here, there's areas that have done really well, like Clintonville is up 7.1%. Canal Winchester's up 25, 24 for Circle. Is that Circle? Yeah, Circleville is up 25%. There's areas that aren't doing so well. And that's where, we're seeing this modest growth because we're seeing drastic changes. And what you want to do when you click on a location, let's just click on Clintonville here. It's the top. You want to look at the year, year to date, what's going on. You're seeing here very, low numbers, very little amount on the market, but you're seeing numbers come up because of that. And you're seeing modest growth still throughout the year. So this month, really was higher compared to the last few months. But going back, clicking on, like, for say, let's go to Columbus School District, which saw, a little bit less, this is including that Clintonville area. So knowing that the Clintonville area is up, but yet Columbus School District is down, shows that the rest of Columbus is not doing so hot. And we're actually just on the brink of seeing, saw some depreciation year over year here, and average sale median price still up on average price per square foot, which again, this means that smaller houses are selling better. And we're close to that, year over year. But the downtown Columbus, you saw negative 17%. So let's just click on downtown Columbus. And just to show this, we saw some depreciation in downtown. So we are seeing it in areas already. We're not seeing it as a whole in the Columbus region because some areas are still doing very strong and some areas aren't. So that's the the kind of the tell of the market right now is that if you're in Columbus looking to make a move or a change or buy, you need to understand where you're looking and understand what that market's doing in that zip code or pocket of Columbus. So happy to dive into that with you. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Just can't reiterate how much the fundamentals matter more than ever right now. And having somebody that has a strategy and a plan to get you into a house or sell your house for top dollar is important right now. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Happy to dive into that. If not, I'll see you next time.